Great. Well, it's really nice to be here with you all today. It's also early for me. So, I've been looking forward to speaking with you all, and I'm in the state of Colorado in the U.S. I guess it's about 4 in the morning here. So if I'm a little scatterbrained, I apologize. But what I've done for today is to put together some examples of pretesting and specific to vaccines, and then some other topics, some other public health topics. So my plan is to not spend too long on a PowerPoint, just to give you some basic best practices, and then to show you some examples, and then to open the floor so that we can have more of a dialogue between us, because I understand I'm the last presenter in this session. So we'll keep it a bit more conversational and less lecture format. I guess I should tell you a little bit about myself too. I think you may have received my bio, but my master's and PhD are in public health, and I did my postdoc at the U.S. CDC as an evaluation fellow. Since then, I've worked for the CDC and the FDA, as well as a bunch of state health departments in the U.S., and for a lot of industry clients and partners as well. So my career in public health is about 20 years, and I've always worked in health communications domestically here in the U.S. and then abroad in global health as well, and have spent a lot of time designing behavior change campaigns for the public in different countries, really from the very beginning of the campaign, when you're coming up with the evaluation protocol and designing the core elements, all the way through to managing the campaigns, the day-to-day managing, and the creation of the creative of the messages themselves, and then disseminating the messages. So what I'm hoping today to show you is just some real-world examples of how that work gets done, and then again, just open the floor and we can talk about them. So message testing is actually pretty simple. I'll start that way. I think we're all in public health on this call, and I know we have a lot of epidemiologists on the call. And I think there are lots of areas of public health where surveying is extraordinarily complicated. For example, when we're creating evaluation protocols for public health programs, that can be a really complicated exercise that requires a lot of due diligence, a lot of literature reviews, really sophisticated study designs, very advanced statistical methods. Message testing really isn't anything like that. So message testing is actually mostly done outside of public health. We don't have a really great evidence base within our field, within the field of public health, around message testing. We have good information there, but the people who do message testing the most are not people who work in public health. They're people who work in marketing and advertising. Marketers and advertisers routinely test messages every day. It's part of their core work. And so if you're looking for the most innovative methods for message testing, the most up-to-date methods and methodologies, the most up-to-date best practices, and the most up-to-date technologies, I often advise people not to turn to public health, to turn to industry. Read journals, journal articles, and books and blogs written by people who work in market research rather than public health research. And again, public health is my field, so I don't mean to disparage the field at all, but we just don't do this as much as the fields of marketing and advertising do. And so what we can learn from that is we can apply a lot of the things that industry is doing to our work in public health pretty easily. But regardless of whether you're in industry or public health, typically message testing, pre-testing follows these 5 steps that you're seeing on the screen right now. So establish baselines, utilize benchmarks, test for efficacy, build context, and then test for preference. And I'll go into a little bit of detail about what I mean here. But basically, don't let methodology get in the way of what you're trying to actually learn. This is something I see a lot in practitioners in public health who are new to message testing. Is we love to design surveys in public health, and we're very familiar with going through IRBs typically and rigorously examining every single angle of the topic that we're studying. But remember that pre-testing and message testing is an exercise in getting only what you need from the people who the message is going to be in front of. And anything else, even though it may be interesting to you, is superfluous, is extra and unnecessary. Message testing is always an exercise in less is more. Try and keep your surveys very short and to the point, and just get what you need to make sure that the message is going to work as best as you can tell, and then be happy with that and move on. And if you remember one thing from my talk, I think it would be that, and that's a big difference between what you see industry do and then what you see public health do. It's often I'll see surveys designed by those of us in public health testing messages, and it's an hour-long survey, or it takes 30 minutes for the person to go through our survey testing messages, and that's not always what we need. That's not always appropriate. I think it sometimes makes us feel good because we get a lot of information, and so it makes us feel safe. But it's not the best way to go about it, and in some populations, it's actually a little unethical, because you're requiring so much time from the person who the campaign is for. So try and keep in mind, it's not just getting the information that we need, but it's also the experience of the person who's filling out the survey. The message fatigue and survey fatigue is a real thing. And people really start to tune out after only a few minutes. So what I mean by established baselines is basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to collect data around whether we think a message is going to work, and so that we can compare that data against other data. That's what we mean by baseline. So the idea is we're going to compare the responses of people in one audience segment to the responses of people in another audience segment, or the people who live in one region, geographic area, to the people who live in another geographic area, or who are this age group compared to this age group. Remember that if you can't compare the responses of people who give you who take your message test, then there's not a lot of value there. So try to make sure that you're always anchoring how people are responding to something that's a comparison group. Utilize benchmarks. What I mean by this is try and make sure that you're using almost always in public health, we have validated measures. So we have ways that other researchers have determined are effective in asking questions. So try and make sure that you've done your homework, and you make sure that if you're asking, for example, about vaccine hesitancy, the question that you're asking is the same question. It's worded the same way as other researchers who've studied vaccine hesitancy before you. Don't just create a survey from scratch, making assumptions that you're wording your questions appropriately without going and looking at surveys that have been done by others to make sure that you're building off of work that's come before. And that might sound really simple and very elementary, but I see it all the time. It's very common for people who are new at this to go and just quickly write a survey, and they think that they've done a good job, and they don't realize that there are other people who have spent a lot of time making sure that the questions are validated and that they could have used. And what that does is, it prevents your data from being as helpful as it could be, but also it prevents you from publishing. So remember that part of being in public health is publishing your results, or at least acting like you're going to publish your results. Maybe your pretest will never get in a peer-reviewed journal, but if you don't set things up in a way where it could be, then it's just kind of it's wasted effort, because what you learn from your pretest will never be able to be added to the body of knowledge around the topic that you're testing. So if at all possible, make sure that your questions go through an institutional review board. Make sure they're vetted by some kind of ethics board, and then make sure that at least some of the questions that you're using in your survey or your focus group or your moderator guide were used by other researchers, like I said, and validated. You can always add in your own questions. That's fine, but just make sure that questions around really established topics, like for example, questions around vaccine hesitancy, you're pulling from other sources. I'm going to continue with the presentation. So include questions for each message. Typically, what you want to do is about 5. Again, it's not a lot of questions, because what you're just trying to get to, will this work or will it not work? It's not, you're not writing a book. You're just trying to test your message and make sure it won't flop or it won't have unintended consequences. So again, don't add don't add extra questions, just add questions that you need. So establish the baseline, include questions for each message, and then test for preference. And again, I'll show you some examples of what I mean here. But here's an example of baseline. Have you or anyone close to you experienced X, experienced whatever we're talking about? And they answer yes, no, or not sure. Or how familiar are you with this topic? And then we have a scale from 1 to 5. We don't need very complicated questions to establish a baseline for how familiar the test taker is for the topic. We just want to get a sense of how have they heard of this before, what's their familiarity level with the topic that we're talking about. Again, doesn't need to be super complicated. And then, like I said, utilize benchmarks where possible. So how did this message impact your motivation to get a flu shot this year? It made me feel, and again, we have a scale, much less motivated to much more motivated and no impact. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to collect data so that you can compare different groups. Either you have a vaccination campaign every year and you want to be able to compare year 2 to year 1, or you want to compare populations to each other or against other goals that the campaign may have. And one note about scales. I know many of you are very experienced in survey design. The reason that we're using odd numbers in our scales is with message testing, it's really important that you get a sense of whether the message is either viewed as really good or really bad or neutral. So make sure that if you're including a scale, it's not an even number. For example, it's not 1 through 4, because then that's a lot of public health messages are not necessarily bad or good. They may effectively convey the message. The person may receive the information that we want them to receive. It just may be boring. And that's okay. Not every message that public health creates needs to be exciting. So allow the person to tell you that they understand the message that you've created. They've received the message, they understand it, and that it may be boring. That sometimes that's totally okay, but you won't be able to tell whether the messages that you've made are boring unless you use an odd number in a scale. And then test for efficacy against goals and objectives. So an example here would be, how interested does this message make you to learn more about this initiative? That's a simple way of asking against your goals. How likely would you be to repost this message on your own social media accounts? Another, it's a very simple question, but it's a very common one, and it's easy to understand, and it gives you good information. So also, I have this note here on the bottom of the screen. Be sure to test the message against the goal and not an individual's likelihood to take an action generally. So what this means is, this is really common for those of us in public health. Often we're testing messages that are attached to someone's values, or something that they know about and care about, some societal issue of concern. And so it's important to be able in your pretesting to tease out whether the person is telling you that they think vaccination is important because they know that's what you want to hear, or whether they personally think that it's important, for example. So you need to get to the message's ability to motivate this individual that's responding to your pretest, versus questions that are more general, where the person's really just telling you that they think vaccination is important because they know that you need to hear that. So an example for context would be, who do you feel this message was intended for? Someone not at all like me, I'm not sure, or someone very much like me? Or which of the following describe this message? The message is personable, or off-putting, or boring, or engaging, or informative, etc. These are very typical questions that both people in public health who do pretesting and people in market research who do pretesting use. I'll also say that this PowerPoint will be available, so you all will have it. And then what you want to do is you want to test messages against each other. So of course, don't just test one message. Test 5 messages and have them be different enough from each other that you can compare them. And if they're so similar that you're not going to that there's no difference, then I would argue, go back to the drawing board and rethink the way that you're creating your messages. Because if they're so similar that you can't tell the difference, there's really no point in pretesting at all. Make sure that the creative is distinct. Make sure that the message is distinct. Choose different words, choose different language, choose different colors if you have to, but figure out a way where you're getting the most helpful information possible, like I said earlier. So which of these following messages made you feel most motivated to take action? And you can allow people to rank them. And then always, of course, in these sorts of surveys, have open-ended questions. Allow people to tell you what they liked, what they didn't like, give you more information. Typically, people really enjoy taking message testing surveys, taking pretest surveys. And so allow them to, and it's because they're being asked to give their feedback on creative. Typically, that's the best kind of survey. You get a lot of people to fill out the survey. You have a lot of people complete the survey, and you usually get a lot of really insightful and thoughtful opinions at the end of the survey. So I always encourage people to include open-ended questions throughout the survey, or at least at the very end, if you don't have time to do it throughout, or you don't have the resources to do it throughout. So like I said in the beginning, this isn't a perfect science. One of the things that I like professionally about pretesting is it requires you to think on your feet. So pretesting means in the real world, not like outside of an academic study, means what resources do I have to get this done quickly so that I can move on with my life. That's what pretesting is all about. So how do I actually reach the communities that this campaign is for example? There's always going to be resource limitations. You never have enough money to do the perfect study, and you never have enough time to do the perfect study, especially if you're, for example, a field epidemiologist, or you work in an in-country UNICEF office, and there's just 2 people who work in communications for all of UNICEF in the country. Don't stress out about it. Don't worry too much about how your pretest isn't perfect, and how it's not going to, it won't be the perfect peer-reviewed study. Just take a deep breath and think about what you can actually get done. And whatever you can actually get done is going to be okay. There is so much messaging being created by different public health initiatives every single day, and most of it is not pre-tested. Most of it is it's a team of people or one person who is doing their very best, and for whatever reason didn't pre-test the message, and it just went out, and then it is what it is. People react to it or they don't react to it. So if you are able to pretest, you're already doing better than most people in public health. You're already ahead. And so at that point, just focus on doing what you can. That might mean that you do a focus group because you can't do a survey. Maybe you don't have the resources to do a survey. You can't reach enough people. You can't reach people over the phone. You can't reach people over the internet. You just can't do it. You don't have the time, or you don't have the money. And so maybe your answer is to do a focus group, and you just get 6 people together. The 6 people are representative of the audience the message is for, and you have an hour with them, and that's all you're going to get. That's fine. That's totally okay. This happens every day. Or maybe you don't have time for a focus group. Maybe you can't do recruitment. Maybe you can't find people in your target audience fast enough. And so you're just going to talk to subject matter experts. You're just going to talk to 2 or 3 people who represent the views of the community, who know the community really well. There are leaders in the community, or there's some other reason that they know a lot about the community or the topic. And that's all you can do. That's okay too. All of those are completely okay, completely justifiable, reasonable ways to go about pretesting. Not everything has to be a randomized controlled trial. That's not how the real world works. When you're running campaigns and when you're creating messages, it's really about how much time do I have, how much money do I have, and then I'm just going to do the best with what I have in front of me. So typically that means it's a focus group or a subject matter expert I'm talking to, or in the best case scenario, if I've got money and time, I'm going to run surveys. I can tell you that in our organization, we're running surveys constantly. We do message testing every single day across a whole range of public health topics. Vaccine hesitancy is one of them. But it's never a perfect science. We're always solving problems. We're always coming up with, okay, well, we've only got 5 days to get results back because the funder needs an answer now, or the hospital system we're working with is really stressed out, and the vaccines, being out in the community in 2 weeks, and we just need to figure this out. And that's just the real world. That's just public health, and that's community health. That's how it works. So just do your best, especially during COVID, where everything is more difficult now. So I'm going to now, I'm going to exit out of this screen here. And what I'm going to try and do is show a couple examples. I thought there might be some interest in seeing what this really looks like in real life. So this is an actual survey done with a huge school health organization here in the United States. So their name has been taken out, but they're very well known. They're in thousands of public schools here in the United States. And they wanted to come up with a new way to message about school wellness. It's a growing field in the United States. It's an evolving field in the United States. And they feel that we've learned a lot, and we need a new way of thinking about school health. And so we worked with them, and we put together this survey for subject matter experts, for people who worked in schools, and we wanted to see how they felt about a new way of talking about school wellness. And so I just wanted to show this as one example. You can see here we have our opening preamble, just a couple paragraphs explaining why we're talking to them. Again, it's not pages and pages. It's just 2 paragraphs to help them understand what we're doing. And then a little bit of information about who they are to establish the context of the person answering our questions. So where do they live? What kind of school do they work in? What is their role in the school? And then what is their role with school wellness? And then we go into, we're testing this new phrase, social and emotional skills, for school wellness. And you can see here, we go right into it. So we say we're going to test social and emotional skills, and then we say, how much do you agree or disagree with the following statements? You can see strongly to unsure. This isn't what it looked like to them. These are our own internal notes. But the phrase social and emotional skills, and you can see we just have some options here. It's clear and understandable, would be useful, could be effectively used, is too narrowly focused. We just worked with people who work in school wellness every day, researchers in school wellness, and we came up with questions that other researchers had used that got good validated results, and we just tweaked those existing validated questions for our purposes. And that's what we do every single time. There's almost no topic in the world that hasn't been studied already. There's almost always questions in surveys that you can use for your own purposes. You can see here again, how much do you agree or disagree? We kind of phrased it that way. And then we break the survey. For the rest of the survey, when we say the phrase social emotional health, we're talking about a composite of both the social and emotional competencies. Now, remember, these are subject matter experts, so they know the topic really well. So we don't need to spend a lot of time explaining school wellness or this concept of social health or emotional health. They already get it. What we're testing is, can we talk about it in a different way? So they didn't need to be educated as much as you would have to do with other kinds of pretest message surveys. So you can see here, we just go into it. And again, that's it. It's done. We got 13 questions, and then it's over. Usually all the time that you spend on pretesting when you're thinking through survey design and the design of your test, it's not all the questions you're going to put in there, and it's not even so much the flow of the survey It's I only have a few minutes with this person. I only have a few questions. So what are the most important things? We spend most of our time just thinking through, okay, well, I've got 50 things I would like to know. I can only ask 10. What are those 10 going to be? So it's a painful exercise in editing. It is typically our pretesting process. So just 13 questions here. And then you can see here, I wanted to show you an example of the end result. And so what this was for was a group called the Alliance for a Healthier Generation. And we got positive results back from our subject matter experts. And so they went with it. And they started making materials talking about social emotional skills. It was a new way to talk about school wellness. And they used it, and they built out a lot of materials, and it's become a core message for that organization. And all of that work, all of that money and time and building those messages came from 13 questions. We interviewed the right people, and we asked the right questions, and that was enough. It was directional evidence to go and continue the work. I'll show you another example. Here's a survey. Sorry about that. Managing multiple screens. Here's a survey for opioids. As you know, in the United States, we have an opioid crisis. A lot of people addicted to opioids. And so what we're doing in this survey is we're testing creative. We're testing the message with creative, with images and video attached. So here we ask, what is your age, your zip code, so where do they live in the United States? Are they married? And then some answers about their household, their education level, their jobs. And then we go into some foundational questions. So have they heard of the opioid epidemic? Which of the following do you think is an opioid? We're doing that in this case because we want to know their knowledge level around opioids. How do they describe themselves? And then we go, after those foundational questions, which we selected because other researchers had used them in their message testing. So again, we didn't make it up ourselves. We selected already validated questions that other researchers had used. Then we showed them the messages, and we kept it really simple. So we showed them an advertisement. We showed them a concept of an advertisement around opioid awareness, and then we asked them, what do you think is the main message of this ad? What do you like about this ad? Please be specific as possible. So we were asking open-ended questions in this example. What do you dislike about this ad? If you could change anything, what would it be? How did this ad make you feel? And then we gave them some options, worried, angry, bored, etc. And then we started asking, how much do you agree with the following statements? This ad was worth remembering. It grabbed my attention. Do you relate to the settings and types of people and activities that we were portraying because we had pictures of people doing things? Of the statements that you heard or saw, was this new information to you? Please rate how believable you thought the statements were. If you saw the ad, would you like to seek more information, talk to friends and family, talk to your doctor, etc.? What about the ad felt most impactful to you? Is there anything confusing or unclear or hard to understand about the ad? If you saw the advertisement, would you tell a friend? And then how much do you disagree or agree with the following statements? Misuse of opioids can lead to overdose, et cetera. And so what we did was we tested about 5 messages there, 5 concepts, and we asked these same questions, the identical list of questions for all 5 concepts. And then to keep it as valid as we could, we randomized the order of the ads that someone saw. So we wanted to be able to compare groups, and so I think for this one we talked to about 30 people, and we just made sure that they didn't see all the ads in the same order, which is just good practice, and I'm sure familiar with all of you. And then again, that was it. So you can see we asked a few questions in the beginning to establish an understanding of who the person was and how much they knew, but that wasn't pages and pages. It was pretty basic. We kept it to only what we need to know, and then we jumped right into questions about the messages, and not too many questions about the messages. You can see here, all in all, we had 28 questions. So not dozens and dozens. And that led to a video.
Okay, my name is Bailey. I'm 22. I work at a cafe, but I'm on break right now.
My name is Jolena.
My name is Chantel.
My name is Tyler.
I'm Lexi. I work in a small town. I'm a nurse.
My name's Nathan Warner. I'm a college student.
There's a big issue with painkillers here.
I mean, it's pretty much everyday news to the point where nobody gets shocked by it anymore. And it's honestly a serious situation that nobody takes serious anymore because it's so common.
I had a friend who was prescribed pain medication for a legitimate diagnosis, and she did become addicted to them.
I know so many friends of mine that I don't hang out with anymore that are on pills and heroin.
My uncle has struggled with addiction with substances along the lines of painkillers and things like that.
A lot of families have been broken up, kids drop out of school.
That's what happened to her. She just one night just overdosed.
People get started on pills like from an actual prescription from like a surgery or something that they're recovering from, and then I think it kind of leads into other drugs like heroin.
It just kind of takes over because there's a slow dependency.
I think the solution is coming together, not making the issue so taboo.
As a community of parents and loved ones and friends, that's something that we need to try to do together.
Tough love goes a long ways.
As a family, together, we can end this.
I think she could have been saved if she would have had somebody there.
So it might surprise some of you that the survey I showed you actually led to this whole video, but it did.
The reason we were able to make this video based off of the survey that you just saw was most of the time when we're making public health messaging or behavior change messaging, it's art and science. So it's a blend of what we know from public health research people need to know. And we usually have that pretty clear. We know what people need to know. What pretesting tells you is what is important to the people that the campaign is for, what's important to the people that the message is for, and how are they reacting to your idea of what the message should be. And that's why it's so important to get to the right people. It's so important to test the people that the message is actually intended for, and to give them the ability to tell you whether it's affecting them or not, whether it's working. And if you structure that the right way, you get in front of the right people and you ask open-ended questions, you allow yourself to be wrong, you allow people to tell you that they don't like what you've made, and give yourself time to remake it. You can arrive at things that are impactful. So we heard from the survey that I just showed you that people felt really strongly that that communities were being victimized, that communities had to come together. A lot of people knew someone who had suffered from opioid use disorder. They had personal stories, and we knew from the public health research that this was true, and that also people were going to respond most strongly to their peers. And so we took all that information and what people knew and didn't know, and we put it together into, like you see here, a public health video that had the things people needed to know and also met people where they were at, acknowledged people's actual experiences with it. One perhaps interesting thing about the way that that we do our work is we never use any actors. So almost always when we're doing our messaging, we are just surfacing community voices. So it's just real people talking in their own words, and they are both the message and the messenger. So my organization has done movies and television shows and very large scale behavior change campaigns, but always the most effective messages are the ones that are given by average everyday people. Just your normal everyday person who is viewed as a peer, as a community member, a neighbor, a friend, a coworker, a family member, of the people that the campaign is for. And so wherever possible, I would just encourage you to do that. It makes your job actually a lot easier. We have to be a little comfortable giving up complete control because these are real people and they will say things in their own way. The people you just saw in this video were not reading a script. Those were real people we just walked up to on the street, and we asked them questions, and those were their honest answers. And then our job as public health practitioners, as health communicators, was to take what they said and put it into a video that conveyed the correct public health information. And every time we've done that in campaign after campaign after campaign, that always does the best. So I know that there's a temptation sometimes to make really highly produced videos, to go to really expensive marketing and advertising agencies and craft messages. I don't think that's really often the most impactful way of doing this work. In my personal opinion, I think the advantage that we have in public health is we know communities. We know who to talk to. We know who community leaders are. We know how to find people. That's the strength of public health, is that we know community health. So go to the people that the campaign is for. Go into those communities, test your messages with those people in those communities, and then have those people be the message. You don't need expensive film studios and actors and celebrities necessarily. You can really just use real people and just let them say what they're going to say, and just make sure that what they're saying is true. That's your role in public health. Is what you say, is what you are saying factually true? And then if it is, then get out of their way. Just let them be the messenger. I think that's what is happening with the media landscape. That's what marketing and advertisers are doing themselves, is they are more and more trying to use real people, because they're trying. So much of whether a message is going to work is whether it is viewed by its audience as authentic and credible and relatable. And nothing is more authentic and credible and relatable than real people talking about their real lived experiences. That's what marketers and advertisers try and pay a lot of money and spend a lot of time trying to create, but it's often fake. they're trying to make you feel something, and it takes a lot of money and creativity and expertise to do that. Whereas we in public health we can just go straight to the person who is really living through this experience. And if we just allow them to be the message and the messenger, we don't need all of the bells and whistles that huge advertising and marketing agencies use. So I'm going to just show you a couple other examples, and then I'll tie up here. I wanted to show you too, a lot of what we heard was this idea of real people and real communities, and that people didn't want to hear more information about this crisis. They were exhausted by it. Maybe they didn't know what was an opioid and what wasn't, but they were just tired. They had experienced this themselves. It was traumatizing, and communities were being torn apart, and everybody knew somebody who had an experience with opioids, and that just kept coming up and coming up. And so they didn't need an education campaign per se. They needed to have that acknowledged, to talk about the community level, real people, see real people like themselves. And then it was our job in public health to make sure that there were facts that were put into those messages. So this is a campaign that's active right now in the state of Pennsylvania. And it's just real people sharing their experiences with the opioid epidemic. And again, all of this came from that pretesting. It created a foundation that we were able to build the campaign on top of. I'm going to skip ahead here, and I'm going to go straight to another type of pretesting that we've done. This pretesting was around creating basically a brand. So you all know that sometimes in public health, it's about the individual message that we're testing, and sometimes we're creating a brand to allow us to continuously message for the existence of the lifetime of that brand. So here are just some examples. We wanted to get a sense of, we wanted to make a brand that was addressing vaccine hesitancy in the United States. And so to do that, we ran a survey with many hundreds of people in the US. And we wanted to see, first of all, how old were they? So you see some basic demographic questions here. In this example, we were most interested in the feedback of people who had a very high trust in public health. And so we asked that in the beginning. How much trust do you have in the CDC and the FDA? And so they answered, and if they answered here, A and B, they had a high amount of trust or a lot of trust, then they continued with the survey. And if they didn't, then the survey ended. And again, that's okay. Not everybody's opinion matters when it comes to health communication. Usually we are creating messages for a specific group of people that are at very high risk, or that have been really affected by a condition or by a topic. And we don't need to concern ourselves with what everybody else thinks. We just want to see what these people think. So we asked questions about whether they thought vaccination was important, and then whether they'd done anything in the last 12 months around advocacy, because this campaign was designed to get people motivated to do something about vaccination, to support vaccination. And then we went into, we had a name for a campaign, the 16, and we went through and we asked them questions just to get a sense of whether they liked the name. And how this typically goes in both public health research and market research is, if you're asking about a brand name, for example, you don't need to tell the person what it is about in the beginning. You typically want their reaction right off the cuff, their knee-jerk, their first reaction just how does it sound? So that's what we did here. They don't know that this is a campaign about vaccination yet or immunization. We're just asking, how does this sound to you? How does the 16 sound? And so they told us, and then we told them, okay, well, here's what it means. It represents 16 diseases. And then we said, so now what do you think about the 16? How this survey was designed, which is very typical, is we ask for an initial reaction, we give the person more information, then we ask for their reaction again, then we give them a little bit more information, and then we ask for their reaction again. This is a really common way of doing it. And you can see again, though, not very long. In total, the questions that were about our messages were just 15 questions in total. But that gave us enough to get what we needed from the people that we needed to hear from, and then to go back and to use our knowledge of public health and what these people had told us and put it all together. And it became a campaign called Stronger. So long story short, people did not like the name the 16. And so we had to go back to the drawing board and figure out a new name. People wanted something that didn't have so much to do with vaccines. They wanted something that was more about what do vaccines do for us as a society? Well, vaccines make us stronger, and also people supporting science and supporting immunization, those people are stronger together. They're stronger when they're united. And so that led to the name being Stronger. So we just listened to what people told us. I've got some resources I'm going to send to Laura to share with you all. A couple papers, some information about message testing. This was really meant, just as a first, just a first pass through of message testing. It's a whole field in and of itself. There are books and books written about this, and seminars and workshops. So there's a lot to know, but I hope what you took from this the most was that it's okay not to know everything, and it's okay just to do your best, like I said in the beginning, to pre-test as best as you can, and something is going to be better than nothing.